What are human rights, and what is their relationship to protest and democracy? Let's think of rights in general terms as claims you have against the government. I can do X, and you can't stop me doing X unless you have a very good reason, and the courts can adjudicate between us if we continue to disagree. Now that can apply to a wide range of circumstances that aren't human rights. I have the right to park outside my house because I paid Eden Council, not because it's a human right. So what makes something a human right? There are deep philosophical arguments, but let's leave them aside. The Universal Declaration on Human Rights 1948 says that human rights reflect the inherent dignity and equality of all people. Since democracy requires equality, everybody's voice counts, then there does seem to be a connection. Indeed, most human rights instruments include a common set of civil and political rights that are directly linked to democracy. The right to life, the right to a private life, the right not to be tortured, a fair trial, free expression, and so on. Human rights may exist philosophically, but to have legal effect they must be evident in a binding law. The state could simply tolerate acts of protest, for example, without ever regulating it or explicitly saying you can, so it's not essential to have human rights. But having a set of defined and enforceable human rights that are pre-political, in the sense that the government is supposed to respect them, is very helpful in safeguarding direct and deliberative democracy. It is much easier to protect those aspects of democracy if you have basic rights that protect your ability to exercise direct or deliberative input into government. Let's stick with the example of protest. Consider how the rights to liberty of person, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of opinion, and the right not to be arbitrarily deprived of your life assist that. They mean in sum that A, I cannot be arrested or killed by the state simply for protesting, and B, I can generally express my views in public on my own and with others. Is there a human right to protest? And if so, where is it found? So this question has at least two aspects to it. First, the philosophical arguments. Are there such things as natural rights? And if so, can protest or freedom of expression be among them? Now, fortunately, we don't need to think about that here, because as a matter of law, internationally and domestically, the right to protest is a human right. It's Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, although that's not legally binding, it does have significant symbolic status. It's worth saying that freedom of assembly is inherently linked to other important rights we also find in the UDHR. Freedom of expression, association, freedom of thought, and the right to liberty of person, as I've mentioned. But I'm mainly concerned with the freedom of assembly. We also find that right, and the others, in more detail in legally binding treaties to which the UK is a signatory. For instance, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is a United Nations treaty, and the other one is the European Convention on Human Rights. We find freedom of expression in Article 10 of the ECHR, and freedom of assembly is in Article 11. Why is the ECHR so important? Well, first, the ECHR system is generally more authoritative than the UN system. Now, what I mean by that is that the ECHR has an effective court, the European Court of Human Rights. Individuals can apply to that court if we feel that their rights have been breached. And if a breach is found, the court can order just satisfaction. Normally, this is some kind of financial compensation and expectation that law will change. The UN system doesn't quite work like that. Second, in the UK, we have the Human Rights Act 1998. This is designed so that we can enforce our ECHR obligations in domestic courts, rather than having to go all the way to Strasbourg. So it's just easier to enforce the ECHR in the UK.